Welcome back into another episode of Where the Game Lives On, the official podcast of the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. I'm your host, Noah Tucker, and as always, my co-host, Byron Shive, is joining me, sir.
Good day. How are you today?
Not too bad. I was just telling you I'm a little tired, but we fight through it, right? I got a little Mio energy going. That's kind of my new thing. I'm rocking. It's got a little caffeine. You know, it's not the energy drink, but sometimes you just got to mix things up a little bit and roll with it. I feel like we haven't chatted a little. Like
it seems like it's been a while.
We had Clay Harbor on last episode. Be sure to go check that out if you haven't. A very motivational guy, a very cool story that he was able to share with us about his journey through Missouri State and then onward.
It was actually, I think, my favorite part of the whole interview was at the very end. Of course, we had the Fall Hall of Fame luncheon was at University Plaza, which is where the bulk of Hall of Fame events used to be before COVID, but. He was telling us, and I had no idea about this, but at the end he was talking about, being inducted and going back to University Plaza. It was a full circle deal because that was his first job in college. Yeah. He was actually, one of the guys that they hired to come in and, flip banquets and tables and bus tables and, all of that. So it was kind of neat, and he was actually brought that into his speech last Wednesday at his acceptance speech. So
definition of a full circle moment.
Really
we appreciated him joining us on the podcast, and then also congratulations to him, of course. As I said, feel free to go back and listen to that episode. It feels like there's been a lot that's happened, though. We spent a lot of time with Clay, and so there's a lot of things for us to catch up on. You had a birthday.
I did. Another
feeling older?
They say what, a trip around. I am actually feeling very old right now. I'm been doing a lot of work around the house over the weekend and even the last couple nights, and played some golf earlier this week for the first time in a while. And of course I had rotator cuff surgery about a year ago. And so every now and then
just
little strain action. And so, but
you can't disclose too much information, but you've got some stuff in the works for, I understand that you guys host a pretty wild, I don't know if I would say wild, but it's a big operation for your Halloween party that you guys host.
Yeah. So we're getting ready for that, coming up this weekend. And just I'm definitely feeling a little sore. So anyway,
just got to get over that hump. We'll be there. It'll be all right.
That's right.
Man, there's so much to catch up on. We might as well just address the elephant in the room. All right, you and I are definitely towards the top of the Hall of Fame fantasy football standings.
I don't know if 3-3 is toward the top.
Okay,
there.
I fell. We played each other this past week. I had a lead going into the Monday Night Football game. Byron definitely has his cheat code, CMC, Christian McCaffrey, which helped him again, but the 49ers lost. I was kind of surprised by that. Well, I mean,
2 in a row.
You know what I tell people? I'm in one of those, it's called a Survivor League.
Yep, I love those.
Where you pick a team to lose.
Yep.
And you get one wrong one, and you'll
you do?
You get one wrong team.
Oh, I've never been in one of those.
But then if you get a second one, you're out.
I've only been in the you miss, you're out. So
I'm in there's probably like 16 people, and it's down to 5. And I was perfect until this past week. And who did I pick? I picked I picked a home team. I picked the Pats.
Yeah.
But that's my point. I hate picking teams at home. It is hard to win games on the road in the NFL.
I love those Survivor Leagues. The only time I ever won one, it was kind of funny actually. I won it in week 1.
Oh my goodness.
There was like 12 people in it, and it seems like it was the Dolphins were good, and they were hosting Houston, who was terrible in week 1. And like 10 people picked the Dolphins, and Houston beat them. One other person lost, and I was the only one that had it right. I won it in week 1. So
there you go. Well, we're down to like maybe 5, I think, maybe 4. I was perfect though until this week, but a lot of people lost on the Pats beating Buffalo.
When my strategy on those for forever was, you everybody plans out, okay, in week 7 I want to pick this team. In week 8, no. I learned early on, you just pick the best team, and if they're gone, if you lose the Chiefs in week 1 and you can't use them again, so what? You survived to week 2.
I guess every league has their own rules. The gimmick I like in ours is you pick a loser every week, but you can only pick a team once. So, a lot of people have already picked whoever it might be from, just like the trough feeders and whatnot. So it starts getting very interesting at this point because you can't just look at the matchups. You also have to be like, I can't pick the Bears. I can't pick the Raiders, whatever it may be.
That's a true Survivor League. If you use them once and you can't use them.
Oh, yeah. It makes it tough. It's somewhat strategic, I guess. We'll switch gears though. A team that did have a good win this weekend, the Knowles. It wasn't dominant, but it's a dub. It's a dub. They moved on.
I mean, if you just look at the game, I mean, they covered the spread. They win by 18. But if you watch the game, I mean, they were down 10 at 2 different occasions. They were down 10 going into the fourth.
Yeah, it was a game.
They were losing going to the fourth quarter. So 60 minutes of football. I mean, Florida State has shown this year that they're going to play 60 minutes of football. So, I mean, they've got I've said it before on this podcast that they've got a long, I mean, they haven't played a perfect game yet. They haven't played A+ game yet, and yet still 7-0. So.
I probably play the victim in this case a lot, being an Oklahoma fan, but I think you probably feel it right now too, with Florida State kind of making their return to, I guess, the podium of college football. Is regardless of if you're in the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the ACC, whatever you want to say, the strength of your conference aside, when you're one of those top tier teams, you're getting everybody's best.
Oh yeah. Well, and you're also, I guarantee you there were people turning on ABC Saturday night and rooting for Duke. I mean, if you're not a Florida State fan, of course you're rooting for the underdog to win. Just like, Oklahoma was playing, was it UCF?
UCF.
Right? I guarantee you there were people rooting for you. I was rooting for you. That's just the way it is if it's not your team. The thing that scares me to death right now, and of course, I think it's a moot point in week 7 or 8 or whatever we're at. But if Florida State goes undefeated, and Oklahoma goes undefeated, and Washington goes undefeated, the winner of the Michigan-Ohio State game is undefeated, and Georgia's undefeated. You got 5 undefeated teams. Which one is getting left out?
Yeah, that might be tough.
And that's what I'm saying. Florida State. I mean, I personally feel like their resume is solid, but I mean, it's certainly not Georgia getting left out. It's certainly not Michigan or Ohio State.
Yeah.
So you got Washington, Oklahoma, and Florida State fighting for 2 spots. So
I saw an interesting thing, and I don't think that this could happen in the Big 10, but there is a really weird tiebreaker rule for the Big 10 East, right?
Yeah.
So who was it? Ohio State beat Penn State.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if Penn State
beats Michigan
beats Ohio State in the game, the tiebreaker rule is like the team with the best opponent's record from the West Division is the team that goes in. I was like, what? Like in the
crazy.
The Big 10 West is just a
trash.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to see how things are starting to shape up. There's so much parity in the Big 12, which is interesting because they're getting ready to go into kind of a new era with obviously their 2 biggest teams leaving.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you get to that point,
I don't think, I mean, Washington's got 3 games coming up against the Utahs and USC, those type of games.
Tough road.
And so it's probably not going to happen, but I mean, it could if you have five undefeated teams.
I would bet that college football would probably like it.
I'm sure they would.
That's promotion for the playoff expansion.
Yeah,
like, hey, this team.
I'm not going to like it if my team goes undefeated. Or can you imagine us sitting here and one of our teams is sitting at home because of a computer or something?
Yeah, you just get into the New Year's Six and it's like a consolation.
I'd be
almost.
So furious.
Either way, though, I tell you what, this is a fun time of year.
It is.
You've got playoff baseball going on. You're in the thick of football season. A little bit of hockey. If you're a hockey person, the MLS playoffs are getting ready to start. Yeah. We got to mention probably Sporting KC. They lost their regular season finale, but prior to that, they did secure a playoff spot. So got to keep an eye on them. I think the Blues are kind of off to they're off to a decent start. They're not, it's early. It's very early, but
St. Louis' soccer team, of course, also starting up. So
I seem to forget about them. It's I'm not the most diehard MLS fan, and one of our former interns would probably
really cool picture I saw on Twitter of Carolyn Kendall, who's she's co-owner, I think is probably the best way to say. I think she's like the chairman, the top person, I guess, in the organization. But it was a picture of her from behind, looking over a packed stadium, and they're in St. Louis, cool. And it was a really neat shot. So
very cool, very cool.
I think this is their first year, and so I mean, obviously, St. Louis is a hotbed of soccer. So
yeah, we've got like we mentioned, plenty of sports to be following now.
I mean, most people realize this. The last time the Rangers were in the World Series, they
the Cards.
Yeah, they
Cardinals.
should have won, but they didn't.
I remember
the David Freese series. So
it would have been sometime around this date, around right now. I remember when Pujols had the 3 home run game in Arlington and just looked like he was immortal.
Well, and I think I've told it on this podcast way back in season 1 or whatever, but the funniest thing about that World Series, Cardinals and Texas, of course, game 6 is when they were basically down to their last strike. David Freese hits the triple off the wall, and, they go to extra innings and then they hit the walk-off. I actually just saw a replay of it this morning with, Joe Buck's call. We'll see you tomorrow night,
Yeah.
But Marty Willitson, the former director of operations here at the Hall of Fame, was at Game 6, and of course, late innings. He wanted to beat the traffic home, and so he was actually in his car driving when that comeback, probably one of the most famous games in Cardinals history, happens, and he
That's
missed
funny.
it. So.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yep, that's the last time Texas was in the World Series. So.
Absolutely. We'll hop on some sports news real quick. This has been confirmed for a little while. It was announced here a couple weeks ago. We haven't had a chance to talk about it though. In Southwest Missouri, the newly formed Ozark Mountain Conference. We've got some schools like Bolivar, West Plains, Branson, Carl Junction, Logan Rogersville, perhaps
and Marshfield.
Correct. Yeah, and perhaps a few others potentially.
Yeah, I mean,
we will see.
Six of them, I guess, join or form the conference. Which, I mean, most people listen to the podcast know I live in Bolivar. I knew nothing about it. I mean, it was a surprise to me when I saw it. So, not that I'm have my ear to the ground, so to speak, but I, as a Bolivar fan, as a someone who they're a Class 4 school. They've been in the Ozark Conference for the past five years or so, competing against Class 6 and Class 5 schools, and holding their own in some sports, not all. But I love it. I love the you're getting the Rogersville Marshfield matchups that you used to have in the COC small.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting to play against teams that are closer to your size, but as you were alluded to, Parkview and Hillcrest have petitioned. I've not heard an outcome on that officially, but they've petitioned to join the Ozark Mountain Conference. Rumors of Neosho and Willard as being some other 2 schools that perhaps have been approached. You got Glendale and Kickapoo perhaps going to the COC conference.
Yeah, up in the air.
And this all, I guess, goes back to, a year ago or earlier this year with the Mid-Lakes, Catholic and Reed Spring and Hollister going to the Mid-Lakes conference. So leaving the Big 8.
I think you and I are both probably in the camp of thought that it's not over. I don't think the conference, it's weird to say conference.
It's kind of mirroring college the way it was, there's a domino that falls. And
yeah. We have talked about the Ozark Mountain in particular. You and I have gone back and forth about it. I think it makes a lot of sense for the schools that are making the move. Obviously, you have a lot of similar sized schools. I think on paper, across a lot of sports, it can be a very competitive conference. I really do think it can. I spoke with somebody who was a longtime figure in Carl Junction, and I think it would please them better if somebody like Neosho or somebody similar might hop in on that conference, because you look at the CJ or you look at the West Plains, and it makes a lot of sense for them in a lot of regards. Travel, maybe not so much. That
Tuesday night trip from CJ to West Plains or vice versa would not be a ton of. I certainly don't think logistics were a deciding factor. I mean, it's that doesn't. I think it was driven mainly by schools that are at least closer in enrollment size. I believe was what this driving factor. I'm not sure what the similar beliefs, and I don't know what that in the press release had to do with, but I think ultimately it was let's get some schools that are similar in size together. But it does leave open. You've got the way things are going, assuming that Parkview, Hillcrest make it into the Ozark Mountain Conference, Glendale and Kickapoo to the COC. That leaves the Ozark Conference is pretty much done.
Yeah,
you got Lebanon, Camdenton, which I would assume they're a package wherever they're going. They're not going to. I mean, they're going to.
You got to keep that rivalry.
They'll stay together, and that also has Rolla and Waynesville.
Yeah, which I would compare to like Washington State, Oregon State, kind of in their
left holding.
Yeah, obviously they're a little further from the Springfield area.
I think that there's a conference that all of the teams in the Columbia, Jeff City area used to be Independence, Rockbridge, Hickman, Battle. Those teams they just formed in the last couple of years. CIC or it's something interstate conference or something to that effect. They just formed that in the last couple of years. I would not be surprised to see Lebanon, Camdenton, perhaps even Waynesville and Rolla wind up in that. At least some of them wind up. I think Lebanon and Camdenton would be a perfect match for them.
Yeah, and I think Waynesville, Rolla, it wouldn't be a stretch either to possibly see them join a St. Louis area
because of the I-44 corridor. I could
Yeah.
certainly see that.
Yeah.
You got some other conferences up that direction, the Eurekas, and that close enough to. But
I think
dominoes are still following.
Absolutely, and you have to kind of see how things play out. The 4 schools that we're kind of referring to here that are kind of in the northeastern part of the Springfield area, the Southwest Missouri area. I don't think the Mid Lakes is a realistic move for any of them. No. Just being that they're Class 5, Class 6 schools, you can't be playing that low.
No, Mid Lakes are your 2s and 3s.
It would hurt them too much in the point value system. For how you get district seating to play Class 2, Class 3, Class 4 schools out of that conference.
I do think I want to say it's the CIC. I'm not sure what it's called, but Rockbridge, Hickman, like Battle. I think Smith Cotton's in there. Jeff City, perhaps Elias. I'm not sure, but it's those schools that used to be independent there in the Columbia area. And Lebanon and Camdenton, I think would be a perfect match for that.
Yeah, and I think that if you're wanting to talk about travel, I think that is fitting. I think it's appropriate. It's not terrible travel. I think it'll definitely work for them. But like you said, you just got to continue to kind of wade the waters and see where the dominoes fall. And we will have an idea of it sometime in the near future, hopefully sooner rather than later. I know that those schools definitely are being proactive in making those moves. So let's remind you real quick. You see the helmet here on our desk if you're watching on YouTube. We have our Missouri Sports Hall of Fame helmet raffle live still. It will be going on through the month of November, and then we will draw it here at the beginning of December. Could be a really, really cool Christmas gift for somebody who is a diehard Chiefs fan or just a sports memorabilia fan in general. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, as he has kind of become known now. But a full-size helmet, you can't find a more elite piece of memorabilia, and we wanted to leave it up to chance for somebody to be fortunate enough to take this thing home. Link to purchase raffle entries for it are in the bio as always. But we'll keep it rolling. Plenty of sports news to get into. The Chiefs got a dub against the Chargers. I thought it was the first win in several weeks where the Chiefs look like one of the better teams in the NFL. The Chargers have trouble winning games, but they're a good team.
Yeah, and now the Chiefs have officially the best record in the AFC, and the rest of the AFC had better hope that they can figure out a way to keep the Chiefs out of Arrowhead in the playoffs. Because if you get Kansas City and Arrowhead, you can go ahead and probably send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. So.
And it's not looking like, maybe Miami.
Well, where are the losses coming on the Chiefs' schedule?
They do have.
They got some tough games, but Buffalo, do they really scare you these days? No. Yeah. Cincinnati, they don't scare you. They got them on New Year's Eve. They're not playing well at all. So
they do still have Miami in Dublin, which
that could be an AFC Championship preview.
I'm curious to see how the Chiefs defense looks in that matchup because for the most part they have looked very solid this year.
Well, and Bolton is out for a few weeks as well. So
actually a few months.
Is it months?
Yeah, with a wrist injury, it's going to require surgery. So that's a little bit of a blow to them. Yeah. They also have to play Philly, which is the other one-loss team,
which could be a Super Bowl rematch.
Yeah, who knows? But the team is looking. Travis Kelce had a really good game. I thought Mecole Hardman made a pretty solid impact in his first game back with the team. Don't know about you. Didn't love the way the move looked personally to just not re-sign a guy that goes into free agency, goes with a different team. And then obviously you give away, I think, a 6th round pick to get him back in addition to a 7th round pick swapped there.
Yeah.
But, I think that if I have any question, that's where it lies, is you can't just have Travis Kelce go for 200 yards every single game. That's not a realistic expectation. So to add Hardman, have somebody who understands the offense back, I think it just gives them a different
And
dimension.
it might look bad. Well, hey, why didn't we re-sign him in the preseason? But would you rather your team, or rather your GM, kind of sit on his hands and not, admit, hey, I made a mistake or I should have signed him, or would you rather him go out and make your team better for the final push? And so,
Absolutely,
I mean, I guess if I guess I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but
it's a fair perspective.
he certainly adds a dimension that they didn't have beforehand.
Yeah, well, and you don't realize it. The trade deadline in the NFL comes up on you quick.
Yeah,
it does, and so they were definitely not hesitant in making a move to feel like this is a piece that could put us over the top. So we'll see. A lot of big games coming up for the Chiefs. It'll be interesting to see how they continue. Don't think they'll have any trouble in the division getting wins there. But yeah, that's the question right now. Can they secure the number 1 seed, guarantee home field advantage?
I don't know. They may have at most 2 losses coming up, if that. I mean, they're playing on another level. They're playing a different game right now. So
other sports news that we have not touched on here in the last month, kind of just been waiting to see what might become of it. The Royals, though, have put in proposals. We've kind of seen some of the renderings for a new stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like they have narrowed it down to 2 different proposals at 2 different locations, each approximately $2 billion in cost. It looks like they're kind of taking some ballpark village-esque, sort of motivation to not only create it as, the stadium itself, but it'll be sort of an entertainment
Still looking
district.
in the downtown areas.
I understand, and I could be wrong. I think one spot is in the downtown area, and then the other location is possibly north side Kansas City.
Okay.
I don't think that's been entirely determined yet. But it looks like they're wanting to kind of make this an encapsulated area that people can go do a lot of things at. Interesting to see that they're wanting to possibly go with a public financing option. I don't understand a lot about it, but I just hear that that's not as common of a move. But what really makes it interesting is they're really hoping to kind of solidify this and have it done in the 2027, 2028 timescale. The only thing that may hinder that is they're still under lease at Kauffman Stadium through Jackson County. So officials could possibly delay it a little bit, but I think they probably will see it as something that can be beneficial. Obviously, Kansas City has continued to be a sprawling area here in the past, and I don't know how you feel. I don't think the Chiefs would really mind it.
A couple things. First of all, lease. Yes, they're under a lease, but when's the last time a team left a city that wasn't under a lease? My point being is that you get the lawyers involved. The lawyers make a bunch of money, and then all of a sudden there's a settlement and they're out of the lease, kind of thing. So that would not overly concern me, although they do have a contract lease, so to speak. I would probably agree with you. I don't know. Obviously, not being in the inner office conversations with the Chiefs and the Royals, but sharing the Truman Sports Complex space for so many years. I don't know if they love having the other team right across the parking lot or not, but it certainly. I mean, it would become Arrowhead Stadium. It would become its own deal. It would be kind of an adjustment to not have the K there, but. I can still remember going to the World Series games back in 15 and, just, kind of a neat, a crazy atmosphere for that. But if you're building and that was a billion with a B, complex stadium expansion, whatever you want to call it, don't you have to put a winning team on the field? Don't you have to spend some money they've been a small market. They've been one of the lower payrolls in baseball. I think if you're expecting, especially the public, to finance this or to at least put in some money somehow through taxes or whatever, then you're going to have to figure out a way to compete.
Yeah. And, you mentioned 2015, 2016, a magical time for the Royals, a time period that we definitely kept a close eye on. It feels so far removed, honestly, not even being a decade since then. The team has just had such a different look about it. And they've gone through so much change since then. They have young talent.
Well, and that's what I remember about that 15 World Series. And I'm sitting here staring at an Eric Hosmer jersey. They had those guys. They had a young nucleus of players, and a lot of them are gone. They're not there. Yeah. Moustakas gone. That some of them have retired, of course, but I mean, how many of them are left?
Greinke was a part of those teams. I think
Salvador Perez on that.
Salvador Perez, but then even Greinke left and came back, and I think he's retiring for all extensive purposes that I understand.
But that was an incredible 2-year. I think 14 and 15. Of course, they lost the series to San Francisco, maybe.
It might be right.
And then came back and won the series the next year. But and then it's like now it's back to.
But I agree with you, right?
I just think you need to.
Yeah,
spend more, and do your best. And I'm not saying they're not, but
it's tough. Like you mentioned, a small market team. There's challenges that come with that, and there's also the price of winning that people don't always think about. Sometimes when you have that success, guys want to get paid.
That's right.
And if free agency's looming, they're subject to go find that money elsewhere.
Go get a bag somewhere. Yeah,
I think that's been the case for them. We'll get to the question of the day. We haven't mentioned the Mizzou Tigers much this past weekend. They did have a better win than I probably would have predicted against South Carolina. I thought they looked very solid. Our question of the day, though, is
why is the national media disrespecting Mizzou football?
Well, and they've got, with the road ahead, they have time to prove themselves. They're surprisingly enough, honestly, everything is laid out before them. They kind of hold the power of their future,
control their own
hands.
destiny. So
they have a really solid wide receiver duo in Columbia this year. Theo Weiss, who is a transfer portal guy from OU, and then one of the best, if not the best recruit that Drinkwitz has gotten since he's been there, in Luther Burden. So the question is, where do you rank their wide receiver duo among the nation's best duos right now in college football?
Well, national media, at least from what I've heard throughout the year, believes that Washington has the best receiving core in the country. Rome Agunze, I believe. I know the first name's Rome, is a top first round draft pick coming up. Mm-hmm. And then they've got a couple other guys that are supposedly top notch. Now, of course, Michael Penix Jr., their quarterback, is probably your Heisman favorite currently, but supposedly they're great. I would honestly put Keon Coleman and Johnny Morris at Florida State, of course. Johnny Wilson, sorry. Yeah. Johnny Morris, hey. Keon Coleman's so good, we can put Johnny Morris out there at the other receiver. But Johnny Wilson, 6'7", and Keon Coleman, 6'4". They are as good as any duo in the country. But
absolutely,
statistically speaking, Luther Burden is the best receiver in the country. Now, of course, Ohio State, they've got probably two. That's going to be tough to beat. They got two guys that are predicted to go in the top 10.
Yeah,
of the
that's
draft.
who I would definitely put.
Marvin Harrison Jr. and then Agunze.
Emike Mbuka.
Mbuka, yeah. Those two are every mock draft I've seen. Of course, they're mock drafts, but have those two guys in the top 10. So that's probably your answer. That being said, I don't know if I'm picking one receiver. I mean, it would be tough to not put Luther Burden on my team.
Absolutely. So. He was actually ESPN named him a mid-season All-American.
Yeah.
He was on a watch list for them, and I think deservingly. I agree with you. I think Ohio State's duo is probably at the top of my list. But I think,
I don't know if you watched. I didn't watch the whole Ohio State Penn State game, but I saw enough of it in highlights. You take Marvin Harrison off of Ohio State, and Penn State beats them. I mean, that was it was.
They're a different team.
That was the Marvin Harrison game. I mean, he just and Luther Burden's the same way. He's the kind of guy, both of them, that it doesn't matter if it's what play it is, if it's a reverse, a pass, a kick return, whatever it is. When they get their hands on the ball, they could go to the distance.
Yeah, he's electric, absolutely, and you have to continue to get the ball in his hands with some of the big matchups they have going on. I definitely would give Weiss and Burden the title of probably most surprising wide receiver duo. And that being said, I think that they're probably around the top 5, easily probably top 10. I mean,
easily top 10. I would say. I mean, we just named off. I mean, Ohio State, of course. Washington is supposed. I mean, they're widely considered to have the best overall group. The best duo probably is Ohio State, but I mean, Mizzou. I don't know how you can go against it. Now, once again, it requires national media watching a Mizzou game, and they're going to get their chance here in a couple of weeks in Athens. So,
yep. And that's the most exciting thing, I think, for me with Mizzou football. is the fact that their road is laid out ahead of them. Mizzou football has had a history of its own. Definitely some bright spots under Coach Pinkel, and kind of struggled to return to that since then. But you're looking at a Mizzou program with some of the recruits that you're seeing them grab, the success they're having on the field right now, that I think you could say the future is bright.
The future is very bright. They've got, and then Ryan Wingo from SLU is about to announce a 5-star receiver, plays at SLU, so an in-state product. And I think he's announcing here in the next couple of days. And he's got a long list of suitors, including Mizzou. And a lot of people think that he's going to stay in state. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
But he's recruiting at a high level. And you mentioned the roads laid out. I mean, I was just sitting here thinking about who they've got coming up. They got Florida and Tennessee at home. They got Georgia on the road. There's your, you win those 3. And
a little bit of a gauntlet there.
So,
but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like we've said, we're always keeping an eye on what's happening in Missouri sports. Just a lot going on across the sports world right now. You've got the World Series starting up here pretty soon, in addition to, all of the playoff pictures shaping out in football. We even showed some love for the Blues, Sporting KC. We're always going to be up to date on it if you want to hear
St. Louis City.
Yes, yeah, them as well. But we've come to the end of our time. We appreciate any time you sit down to listen to us here on Where the Game Lives On. We've got new episodes every Wednesday. Just be sure to follow us on our social media channels and stay up to date on everything from new episodes, new inductees, or awesome raffles like what we've got going on right now. Anything for the people, though?
Nope, just have a great week.
Man of the people. We'll see you next time on another episode of Where the Game Lives On.